All right, we are live. Hey, everybody. It is Kelli and Coach Caro here today. And today, it's Thursday, so we have our live coaching chat here at noon on Thursday. And we have a lot to cover today because the first thing that we want to share is that these live coaching calls are going to be moving into our membership area. So for those of you that don't know, we do have a membership community called Grief Relief Nation that is a wealth of information and a wealth of support from all of our coaches. And so these interactive, meant to be highly personalized coaching calls are going to be moving to inside the Grief Relief Nation membership. So if you're curious about that at all, drop a comment below. We'd be happy to chat with you. And don't worry, in this free group, in the Grief Relief group, we are going to pop in from time to time and do calls somewhat like this. It just won't be every week on Thursdays. So for those of you that have been tuning in regularly, just wanted to give you that heads up. But I'm so thrilled to have Caro here. It's always a pleasure when she comes and chats, and she always brings, I love her accent, so we always feel like so civilized when Caro's here. So first of all, Caro, thanks so much for being here today. You're looking fabulous and enjoying the summer, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So again, this time is twofold. We're going to chat a little bit, and we do have a topic that we want to talk about today, but really this time is set aside for you guys, for the members of Grief Relief Nation, and for the folks that are tuning in. If you have a question, if you have a concern, if you're stuck in your grief recovery, just anything, this is meant to be a live coaching interactive time. So we make ourselves available for about a half an hour or so to just answer your questions and engage with you. But today, until we start seeing people asking questions, we are going to chat about the difference between support and recovery. Support and recovery as it relates to grief and mourning. You know, those things actually are different things. And I think part of the reason people get confused is they think those words mean the same thing. So, Caro, why don't you jump in and just from your point of view, what in your mind's eye, what's the difference between support and recovery?
Yeah, sure. So to me, when we support each other, we share our stories, what we're going through. You know, there's a lot of Facebook groups out there where this is exactly happening. But if we do just that, it's got its place. But if we do just that, we just stay stagnant. We're not really moving forward anywhere. Whereas recovery is taking action, being active in moving forward, working through our grief, because what I always say is time doesn't heal all wounds. So if we just rely on that support and just sharing our stories and things like that, we're not going to move forward. We get to do the inner work, see what comes up, and to work through our grief to be able to move forward. So that's what I really see the difference there.
Yeah. And I know that you've had a lot of training in neurolinguistics and about how our minds work. So maybe explain for people why support can be that trap. Like, you know, internally, what's happening when you're just kind of always in that place of support and don't move to a recovery place.
Yeah. So it's really important the mindset that we have and what we tell ourselves. So if we're just in that place of support and just always relying on other people to help us and not taking that action, then that's what our brain takes in, right? It takes in like, okay, we'll always need that support. If we tell that ourselves, then that's what's going to happen, because our brain's job is to keep us safe and familiar, and it always wants to prove us right. So that's where we get stuck in there. Whereas once we take that action and to really look at what we get to do to work through things, then our brain opens up and it looks for the different opportunities that it can do to heal and recover and move forward. So yeah, it's really important the mindset that we have and what we tell ourselves, because I don't know if you know the quote by Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So whether you think you can recover and you take that step, those steps, or whether you feel like you're forever going to be stuck and you just, you know, in those groups where you just share your stories, it doesn't move you forward. So whatever you believe is possible, you're going to be proven right.
Yeah, that's so true. And also when you're in those groups and those places where all you're doing is kind of perpetually sharing your story and hearing other people's story, you keep re-traumatizing yourself. You kind of keep living when you remember the trauma, your brain doesn't know the difference between what's happening in real life and what you're imagining. So if you're constantly recounting the day your person passed away or the details of it, your body's receiving that trauma all over again. And so you can be re-traumatizing yourself over and over again. The analogy that I like to use is, if you broke your leg or your ankle, something like that, and for a season you would need crutches. You would need a cast and you would need crutches because you broke a bone. You can't try to walk on it. It would be dangerous, right? So at first you need support to do the work for you. But at some point, you have to take the cast off and you have to start working on those muscles. And I think that the trick is that a lot of people start to go down the recovery path, but it hurts and it's hard. And so then they assume like, oh, this isn't what I need. I need to go back to support because support is safe and comfortable. And, like you said, other people doing things for you. And so it feels better, it feels safer. But the trick in the trap is, yeah, you can be there for months or years. You could find yourself there, several years later. So in your estimation, what does making that shift look like from support to recovery? Like, what does recovery mean to you and look like to you?
Well, like I mentioned, it's really about starting to do that inner work. So starting to not just feel our feelings, but actually recognize, okay, these are the things I'm feeling, and then see, okay, where are they coming from? Because again, we know from neuroscience that everything starts with a thought. So the thought center of the brain fires before the emotional center of the brain, but we're much better at recognizing our emotions than our thoughts. So next time you're feeling particularly sad or angry or anxious, be really curious. What am I thinking? What's going through my mind right now? Where is that coming from? And then I am a big fan of journaling. So get out pen and paper and just write down whatever's on your mind and then have a look, see what's there, and just, with no judgment, just get really curious, and then you get to acknowledge it, and then you get to work through it. And like you said earlier, that might be painful, but one thing is that we don't grow in our comfort zone. And the other thing is it's temporary pain. It doesn't even need to be painful, but it's that temporary work that we get to do. We get to recognize these thoughts, but for a longer term gain. So instead of just having this mediocre life and that grief on our mind constantly, we get to do that deeper work to then be able to heal and move forward and recover.
Amen. And I mean, and I've just found in talking to people, I know that this program isn't for everyone. Not everyone is going to resonate with it or be ready to do the work. But for those that are out there that are like, man, it's so heavy and it's so hard, and I really don't want to live the rest of my life like this, but I don't know how to fix it or change it or do something about it. This is exactly what we're talking about. It's doing the work so that you get back in the driver's seat. One of the toughest things for me about grief and what I've heard from other people is that it's so disorienting. Like it can just come out of nowhere. Those grief waves can come or triggers can come, pick whatever word you want. And you can feel so out of control, like that it's having its way with you. And it's really hard to feel like you can recover from something that you seemingly aren't in control of. But that's what we're talking about here, is teaching you the process so that you can be more in control of those things. We don't have to just be bystanders or victims of this grief process. We actually have a really active role to play, and there's a part for us to do. And I think that's a lot of people don't realize that they play a part and don't go about the business of learning how to do it. So that's what keeps them stuck. I do see a couple of people here. So if you're here, hop on, drop a comment, let us know where you're tuning in from. If you have a thought or comment about support versus recovery, which one is better or why, or where you're at in your recovery process. That's even how I describe it all the time. It's a recovery journey. That's really what it is. When you experience loss and mourning, is you have to go through a journey to learn how to recover. What do you say to the people, and what are your thoughts about the whole idea of like, well, we never really recover, we just learn to live with it, and grief never goes away? What's your thought about that?
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think that the important thing to firstly recognize and acknowledge it is that the fact that our loved one has passed away, that's always going to be sad. Like my mum's, she took her life nearly 9 years ago, and I'm always going to be sad about it. I'll never think, oh, that was a good thing or was it an okay thing. I always think it's a terrible thing. It's a really sad thing. The important thing for me was that it's now not at the forefront of my mind all the time anymore. And I think that's a big difference right there. And I think, yes, it is an ongoing journey. For a while, I was thinking I'm going to get to that destination and then I'm done. I don't think we're ever done grieving, but it changes, and our role in it changes, how we approach it and how we look at it. It changes. And I think as someone who's grieving, no matter how far along in our journey, it's really important that we've got the tools in place, that we know how we can help ourselves. That I'm a big fan of self-care as well. So I think, yes, it is a journey, and it changes, and it doesn't have to be or need to be the same on day one as it is after a few months or a few years.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's a matter of like semantics and interchanging words, but for me, grief and grieving feels heavy and hard and almost like a affliction or sickness. And because yes, I lost my mom and my son, and they're not coming back. That nothing's going to change that. But I try to live from a place of remembering and honoring, right? So instead of, and I would be lying to say, I don't ever miss them. I miss them, I feel the absence at family events and things like that. I miss them, but most times I can honestly say when I think of them, it's fond memories and it's happy thoughts and it's all these things. And then I do very intentional things to remember on purpose, to remember them and honor their legacy by the way that I live my life, so that part goes on forever. And that's the part that I really try to encourage people to embrace. Like, yes, you'll be connected to them for the rest of your life, just like you are with your family members that are here. And that doesn't have to even be a sad thing. You can be connected to them and honor them and remember them and do things to include them in your life. And that doesn't always have to come from a sad place. You can do things that are hilarious, or you can do adventures that include them. Like I think we just, could broaden our ideas about how we remember them or how we include them,
And I think you made an important point there as well, because what I hear a lot is that fear of, oh, if I recover, if I move forward, if I heal from this, it means I'm leaving my loved one behind. And that's so not true. We get to take our loved ones with you. And what that looks like is so individual to each and every one of us. But like you mentioned, you could go on an adventure, or think about the things that you like doing with your loved one or that made your loved one special, and incorporate them in your recovery and in that life that you still get to live.
Yeah. And that's my favorite part. I love hearing the creative ideas that people come up with to incorporate their loved one in their lives. We have one gentleman that goes and feeds the hummingbirds in his backyard all the time because that's what his wife used to do. And I have one lady who her daughter loved hearts. And so every year she buys a heart ornament for her Christmas tree. And that's the way she's going to include her daughter in the holidays. And it's like, those are really sweet, gestures. They don't have to be filled with sadness. And you could literally think of something every day to do, or something, every holiday to do. I want to touch real quick. Again, I see a couple people tuning in. If you're here, drop a comment, say hello. If you have a question, if you're in your grief recovery journey and you're stuck, maybe you're not stuck, but just chime in and let us know where you're at, how long ago it was since you lost your loved one. I also always encourage people really often to grade yourself. Grade is the wrong word, but assess yourself. A scale from 1 to 10, 1 being awful, like it just happened today and you're really, raw and devastated and full of sorrow, 10 being fully healed and recovered and full of joy. Give yourself a score and just see where you're at in your grief recovery journey. It might help you to have some clarity on, if you're happy with the number or not, and decide what steps you need to take to increase that number. That's always a good thing to do. But the other thing I wanted to touch on is we're doing, if you're in the grief relief group, this month we are doing the gratitude challenge, because last week on our live coaching call with Kristen, we were talking about what a powerful shift that is. And it's so hard to do, though. Like, it is really hard to do. And we did a challenge that we're supposed to find 3 things every day to be thankful for. And the trick is you can't repeat. So every day you have to find, for the rest of August, we have to find 3 new things to be thankful for. And I'm telling you, the only reason I'm the accountability of being in the group and having to report to the group the 3 things that I found out is what's keeping me going. But it's stretching those muscles and building new muscles to try to intentionally look for things to be grateful for. And when you're really going through a hard time and when you're grieving someone that you've lost, it can seem like almost offensive to try to find something to be thankful for. But talk to me a little bit about that, like gratitude and the mind shift or the perspective. How did that play a role in your recovery when you lost your mom?
Yeah, it was so important. And I'm not gonna lie, like you say, when it first happened, I was really struggling with. And I believe in God. I pray every day. And before I lost my mom, I did as well. And when I lost my mom, I just thought, God, right now I can't be grateful. I can't do this. That was right at the beginning, until I started to work through this and I started to recover. So I just want to acknowledge that as well. But to me, it was so important, because it shifted my focus on just the bad things that happened to some of the good things, because there is always something that we can be grateful for. If we're watching this, you've got an internet connection, you've hopefully got a safe place to live, some food to eat. So that's another thing. It doesn't need to be massive things that we're grateful for. But yeah, for me, it was really to change my thinking from the negative to the positive, because again, from a brain's perspective, when you just think about the sad things and expect the sad things, that's what your brain is going to go looking for. And conversely, when you can find even 3 things that you're grateful for, and I love that you're making this challenge even more challenging by not being allowed to repeat anything, but then that's what your brain's going to see, and you're basically then replacing those sad and negative thoughts with some positivity.
Yeah. Our brains really are that simple, and it's almost too simple to believe. But whatever you tell your brain is true, then your brain is going to go out and find evidence to support that. So it's so powerful. These 2 concepts we've talked about, even if you tell your brain that you can't recover, that you'll never recover from this, your brain is going to go find all sorts of examples and facts to support that case. And you will, for the rest of your life, feel justified in the fact that you're never going to recover from this. But conversely, if you tell your brain, even if you don't know how, like I remember when I saw, I didn't think recovery was possible. I existed for months, just kind of I call it a zombie-like state. I was just going through the motions and I didn't think it was possible until I saw a lady who did it. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I just said, I'm going to do that. I don't know where to start. I don't know how long it's going to take. I didn't know any of those things, but I knew that it was possible. So that became the message that I gave my brain, like, I am going to recover. And then my brain started to explore and discover and find resources that taught me how to recover, which is what we're teaching now today. So please, if you're watching this, if you take nothing else away, be aware of the messages you're sending your own mind and understand that your mind will make the case for you. Whatever you tell it, it will go out and make the case. So if you think that you have nothing to be grateful for, your mind will show you all the things that are wrong about your life and that you don't like about your life. And, the other thing too, what you focus on grows. So if you're going to pay attention to that, you're going to find more and more of that in your life. And so what do you want to grow in your life right now? Do you want positivity and gratitude to grow? Do you want healing to grow? Do you want connectivity with other people? Like, what are the things that you want more of in your life? And then intentionally start thinking about those things and put your brain to work to go find the resources. And as the words are coming out of my mouth, I realize this can sound so like trite and simplistic and like, oh, just think happy thoughts. Like, I want you to hear, we're not saying that. We don't pretend that it's instant or easy, that you can just think happy thoughts in the depths of grief and that's just going to correct everything. There is very real trauma that happens to your brain and your body. And Caro, you mentioned about this, like just taking really good care of yourself and giving your mind and body time and space for recovery, because time doesn't heal all wounds, but time is a component, right? Like you're not gonna, when a trauma happens 3 days later, you're not gonna be better. You're just not. Like, time does play a part, and it's one of the ingredients of the cake. You can't make the cake of healing and recovery without time, but time is not the only ingredient. You need to add other things in there. And so it's this kind of like balance of taking the steps that you need to do and giving yourself patience and grace and letting time do its bit too. What do you see with that? Do you see people expecting, to be better sooner, or what is the folks that you work with, how do they feel about the time component of it?
Yeah, I think so. And the thing to remember is some of that, like you mentioned, the trauma, some of the trauma that comes up when we lose a loved one isn't just from that. It's stuff that we've brought with us even from decades ago. So when we rewire the brain and have those positive thoughts and the gratitude, research has shown us it takes around 67 days for our brain to rewire and things to shift. So oftentimes people will try it for a few days or a couple of weeks and they don't notice any changes right away, and then they think, oh, this is not working, I'm just going to give up. And the thing is with this as well, it's not linear. It's sort of a grief itself, it goes up and down and all over the place. But with gratitude and with these positive thoughts and shifting our mindset, it's really more like at the beginning we've got this flat curve and then it really goes up quite quickly, and people tend to give up because they're still in the flat bit, because they expect their effort and return to be equal, which it is not at the beginning. And then it's so sad when they give up too soon, just before they gain the momentum.
That's so good. It's like compounding interest, right? Like if you're having just a couple pennies every day, it can feel like, what the heck? There's not even anything happening. But then, yeah, that massive shift that happens when the incremental things that you've been doing finally catch hold or give you breakthrough or whatever. It's also great what you mentioned, because I've seen this happen so much too. When we have grief or trauma, so many times it's going to bring up things from our past because it strikes at such a very deep place, an intimate place. So chances are there are unresolved issues or coping mechanisms that you've used in the past that are not healthy, that are not good. And all that stuff is going to come up to the surface because it's like you've been cut open and all your insides are on the outside. And it's super painful and super uncomfortable. But it can also be an intense time for healing, not just healing from the grief and the loss, but healing from old wounds, healing from incorrect mindsets or limiting beliefs. Like if you will really just lean into this painful place, you can come out the other side like a totally different person in the best way. You can become, and that's what people always say, oh, I'll never be the same. Like, you're right. You will never be the same. You will never be the same, but you get to decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm night and day different. I'm almost unrecognizable to the person I was before I lost my mom. And I can also say, I want to say 100% of the way that I've changed has been all for the better. Maybe that's too bold. Maybe there's some bad habits that I've picked up throughout this grieving process. I've certainly know I've made decisions that haven't been great in the midst of grief and grieving, but the changes that I've made, the ways that I've changed as a person, the mindsets that I've learned and adopted have all been for my better. And so even just focusing on that, if people who are looking for something to be thankful for, grateful for, being thankful that you're learning these new things, that you're, changing. And I always say too, sometimes you just have to be thankful that you made it through another day. Like, sometimes that's enough. If you're waking up today and you lost someone recently, you're not in yesterday anymore. Like, you made it another day. You're one step further. You're one day further along in your recovery process. And sometimes just acknowledging that and celebrating that is what we need to do, because again, that is telling your mind, oh, we're getting there. Like, we're doing something, we're making progress. You're not telling your mind, oh, it's always going to feel this way, and I'm like going to be like this for the rest of my life. You're saying, no, today I'm a step closer than I was yesterday. And if you tell your mind that, your mind is going to start looking for reasons for tomorrow to be better than today. It's such a subtle but important shift. These are the types of shifts we're talking about, and they're not like night is day and day is night. They're not like massive shifts. It's a slight twist in how you view things, your perception, your mindset, but it makes all the difference in the world. Like 100%. Yeah.
That's why I love what you mentioned, about us assessing ourselves. Where are we in our grieving process? How are we feeling on a scale of 0 to 10? Because, like I said, it is so subtle. It is a little bit, a few steps each day. It's not a massive change overnight. So if we can assess ourselves on a regular basis, and we can look back and see, oh, look, a few weeks ago I was at a 2 and I'm already at a 5. I'm getting there. I'm moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And conversely, like, I've talked to, the other trick with that is you can settle for less than best, right? Like, if when the trauma first happens, you couldn't get out of bed, and now let's say you've gotten to the place where you get out of bed, but that's about it, and you're exhausted and tired and irritable, and you're not happy, you're not looking forward to the future, but at least you're getting out of bed, you may begin to believe like, oh, this is just what life is going to be like. And you may accept it as your destination and like, okay. And that was what happened to me. I was like, oh, this is just how I'm going to be after my mom died. Because I'll talk to people about, how are you doing in your grief recovery? And they'll say, oh, I'm doing fine. I've got all this support. And then when I ask them to give me a number, everyone always gives me like 4 or 5. So it's like, in any other area of your life, why would you settle for a 5? If your health was only a 5 out of 10, if your marriage was only a 5 out of 10, if your finances were only a 5 out of 10, like, would you be okay with that? Why would you, So I just think that number thing is great, because it's easy for us to say, oh, I'm doing all right, and you're better than you were, which is great. But like, I just want to encourage people, like, don't settle for anything less than excited for your future and showing up and available for your present, and remembering and missing your loved one, but also honoring them and involving them in your day-to-day life, and genuinely, truly being looking forward to your future, not just enduring your future or surviving your future, but believing that there are still good things that this life has to offer you, and that you're going to be available and healthy and ready to receive them. And if your mindset is anything less than that, then I want to encourage you, whether it's with us or anyone else, to find the tools and support and resources to get yourself there, because we're here to say that that's available. We're here to say that that's what we're walking in. And that's what we love to help people get to, that place where they really are, an 8, 9, 10, like nobody's a 10 out of 10 every single day. We still have ebbs and flows and whatever else, but it should be the majority of the time that you are on that upper end and really, really enjoying life. So, well, we've had a couple people hop in and out, but I haven't seen any questions come through, and it is 12:30. So we'll give it one last minute if anybody's hopping on, if you have questions, or if you're catching the replay. Actually, I know this is posted in the group, and I know a lot of people watch the replay. So if you catch the replay and you have a question specifically about what we're talking about today, if you would like Caro or I to respond or to connect with you individually, drop a comment, put replay and your question, and we'll reach out to you. And Caro is one of our fantabulous Grief Guru coaches, and she works with individuals and groups to go through our program. So I will put the link to her personal calendar below if any of you would like to book. We do actually a free grief recovery strategy session, so she can talk about your individual situation, kind of where you're at on that continuum, and make some recommendations about what might be helpful to get you from a 5 to a 10 or a 2 to an 8, or, you know, your individualized thing. So we'll be sure to drop her calendar link below. But Caro, thanks so much for carving out a little bit of time and having this chat with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good to be here. It's always fun to speak with you and to educate people.
Yeah. Hope you guys found it helpful, and we will see you all. Well, we won't see you in the free group next week, but in Grief Relief Nation, we will be here weekly for chats. And if you're watching this and also have questions about that membership, drop a comment about that below, and we can let you know details about that. So, all right, thanks everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye.